Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Keep Fantasy Great podcast. As always, I'm your host and commissioner, and today we got a good episode for you. I'm going to touch onto the power rankings just a little bit, and then we're going to bring in our special guest for our special segment. For the power rankings this week, I actually did a great job last week to the point where I almost agree with all of my rankings. Last week I had Bartis at 1, Josh at 2, Drew at 3, I'm at 4, Emmett at 5, Cactus at 6, Shijin at 7, Steve at 8, Greg at 9, Burr at 10. Now everyone 6 through 10 lost, and everyone 1 through 5 won. So what I saw this past week, I was a little impressed with some of the lower teams. But again, my top 5 won, and I kind of want to keep it all the same. So I got Bartis at 1, guys 4 now, number 1 in points. There's not much to argue about here until he proves us otherwise. Number 2 is Josh, another big win for him. Team looks good. Running backs, that was the big worry coming into the year, going wide receiver heavy. Running backs have been great. Only worry here, possibly the quarterback. Maybe Russell Wilson can kind of find his groove a little bit. At 3, I got Drew. Drew pulled out a win. It wasn't looking pretty at first, but when you have Cooper Kupp and his hyper targeted by Matthew Stafford, things could be good. Drew's a little more top heavy. Doesn't have the balance of depth, but you got some emerging superstars possibly in his young Jets guys. And number 4, I got myself. Outside of Bars, probably the most consistent team in the league so far, putting up about 120, 130 every week. Haven't seen a huge outburst yet, but when you're consistent, you'll win, you'll lose. 2-2. At 5, I got Emmett. Emmett's 3-1. An ugly win, but a win. A win is a win, especially in fantasy football. Every win counts. Emmett has that ability to put up those huge numbers, but he also can have those lackluster weeks, which we saw. But he was able to get a win. He's got the guys that can pour on the points. Whenever Lamar's not going to have his 50-point performance, it's good to get a win on top of it. At number 6, I still have Cactus. I think the team's solid. I think, he's a quarterback injury away from being 3-1. It sucks, but, that's fantasy football. Hey, back to the drawing board, I get it at QB. But Cactus still at 6. I kind of like 7, 8, still Shijin Steve-ish. They're both solid. I think Shijin had a down week. Steve, another good week, but a loss still, which hurts. Because of the injuries Steve just has been induced with, the Cordell Patterson. Last week he had Mike Thomas go down. I'll keep Steve at 8 and Shijin at 7. I think Shijin bounces back, and soon. You haven't seen Kamara score many points just yet. I think Tua getting injured kind of messed with Waddle's groove. I think a week with practice under Teddy Bridgewater might be better for him. I got Shijin 7, Steve 8, Greg 9 still. Again, not an impressive performance. He finally had that Eckler and Debo game that you've been looking for. But nowhere else, the rest of the team was kind of lackluster. And then Burr at 10. I'd have Burr higher, but the injury to Javonte kind of knocks him down a peg again. He has a good week finally, and then bang, you lose one of your top 3 guys to an ACL injury for the entire season. So that's going to conclude it. I'm looping my power rankings over into this week. Makes my job easier. But for now, we'll get into the next segment. Bringing in our special guest today, we got Josh Warren to go over an overdue segment. Today we're going to talk about trades, and that's why Josh is here, the trade man himself. Josh, welcome into the pod.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, of course, dude. And without further ado, we haven't had a lot of trades yet. We're in week 4 now, week 5. We're in week 5. 4 weeks gone, and only 3 trades to really go over today. So the league hasn't provided you with a lot of content here, but we'll do our best.
I know it's been brutal, but we'll work with what we got.
Yeah, starting off with our first trade, it was you. You'll be the feature here to start. You and Steve, you sent him George Pickens, Michael Gallup. He sent you Ezekiel Elliott. How are we feeling about this one?
Looking back at this, it does make me cringe a little bit, seeing as I did trade for Zeke as a potential RB2, and now that 2 weeks have passed, I do not want to ever place him into my lineup. He's pretty horrible. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a C+ to start off. That was a pretty bad trade. I'll give myself a C+ because I did have intentions of trying to get an RB2. I was doing the right thing, but it just did not work out the way I wanted it to. So give myself a C+, and definitely I'm going to go with a higher grade for Steve. People hated it at first. I don't know why. Zeke is not very good anymore. So I'm going to go with a B for Steve, and that's mostly because Kenny Pickett's now starting. So It does give a boost to George Pickens, who put 16 points up in his first game with Kenny Pickett. So he put up 100 yards. He put up 16 points. He's looking good. Another rookie receiver that might pop off. And he has Michael Gallup now that Dak is coming back soon. Not yet because Cooper Rush, he's slinging, but it's looking good. He's got two receivers that are better than my one running back. So I would honestly trade straight up Zeke for either one of those guys at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely did not win that trade. Looking back at it, it makes me cringe a little bit, but it is what it is. Steve got roasted for it in the beginning, but you never really know until you make the trade. So I'm going to go with Steve winning that trade.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. You talked about it a little bit in the beginning, how he got a little roasted in the group chat. And that was our biggest controversial trade so far this year. I mean, coming from myself included, I did put the dislike on that trade when I first saw the message. It's easy to do that when you see a big name like Ezekiel Elliott thrown around. But looking back on it, you saw the upside Steve was trading for, and last week you could see the potential where that grows for him. I like your outtake on it. Yeah, I mean, Kenny Pickett with George Pickens, they got a lot of reps together as the number 2 team in Pittsburgh over the offseason and so far. And then you got Michael Gallup, who, you saw Noah Brown shine, but that was because, again, Noah Brown and Cooper Rush had a little bit of a connection probably from playing with the backups. Michael Gallup comes in, he's going to easily take that number 2 job. And in Dallas with Dak coming back, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I could see why people didn't like it in the beginning. Ezekiel Elliott, you hear the name and everyone gets all riled up. But now that Tony Pollard is there, he even looks like the better back, to be completely honest. So
definitely,
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, pure upside for Steve there. You got to see Steve through sometimes a little bit with his trades.
That's a fact.
Our next one is another Steve feature. Happened last week, I believe, maybe 2 weeks ago.
I think it was last week.
Right last week, right on Tuesday, right after the week ended. A little early morning trade here. Steve sent Adam Thielen to Greg for Juju Smith-Schuster, another former Steelers wide receiver coming back to Steve's team. We know how he likes them. How did you like this one?
So I thought this was pretty fair. Wide receiver for wide receiver. Usually you kind of question why someone would do that, but I do see why Greg said that he wouldn't start Juju ever. So if he's going to start Thielen, that's already a win on his side. And then Steve, Juju's his guy, despite how not good he's been this year. He's getting the targets. You got to give him that, but he's just not putting up the yards. Mahomes has a ton of decent weapons that he spreads the ball around to. So hasn't been great, hasn't been awful. I'd go a B on both sides. It's been a pretty average trade. Greg needed the receiver depth. He had Keenan on IR, Renfro on IR, and then he has Gage, Brown, and Hollins.
A bunch of waiver wire scrubs.
Yeah, I don't know where he got those receivers from. He has Lockett, who's been pretty good with Geno, but he did need the receivers. And Steve, he's always going to go for a guy that used to be on the Steelers or is on the Steelers, especially Juju.
Right.
So maybe he pops off towards later in the end of the year. But for now, I'm just going to go B on both sides, and we'll see how that plays out towards the end of the year.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned that, Adam Thielen, a nice little plug-and-play kind of guy for Greg, who it could have been. Greg had him on his bench last week and almost costed him the possible chance of a win.
Yep, and Adam Thielen looked great last week. To be honest, in the beginning of the game, I thought he was better than Justin Jefferson. I was getting a little nervous. Justin Jefferson's had me very nervous. So Thielen looked really good. So I was tempted to give Greg the win, but this Juju's getting a lot of targets. So we'll see how that goes. I don't want to. I don't want to declare victory on.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't anything too crazy. I'm just happy that trades were made, because I've texted some people in this league, I'm not going to mention names, and before I even offer anyone, they say no shot. Yep. So I'm just happy some people are making trades. So.
Yeah, definitely. I know you and I have had our talks a little bit. Don't want to reveal everything so far, but happy on my side that I haven't made those deals.
Definitely. Yeah, we did have our talks. We'll probably have some down the line, but for now, stick it out with what we got.
And now our last trade That just happened Friday before the weekend games. We had Bartis and Barrera trade. Finally, a Barrera trade. Took us long enough to get there. Classic trading with Bartis. He sent J.K. Dobbins to Bartis. Bartis sends Brandon Ayuk to Barrera. An interesting one for a guy that drafted Brandon Ayuk. But what were your thoughts?
When I first saw this, I was just questioning what Barrera was doing, to be completely honest. He said he made this trade due to new news. I'm not really sure what that news was that would made him do that, but I'm going to go ahead and give Barrera a C-. I'm not going to give him an F, and the reason I'm not going to give him an F is because he needed a wide receiver. He did need wide receivers. He has Brandon Cooks and Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has not been too good, and neither has Brandon Cooks. So I will give him a C- because he traded for a wide receiver, despite the wide receiver that he traded for being one that he cut the week before. So I don't want to be too brutal on Barrera, but I'm not really sure what he was thinking right there. And I'm going to go with an A for Bartis. He gave up a receiver that he added on waivers. I'm not even sure if he spent fab on him, to be honest. I don't even think he did. And
Nope.
if he did, it might have been, yeah. So
No fab.
He didn't give up fab. He got J.K. Dobbins for free. The weak spot on his team was RB2. I'd definitely say it's probably not anymore because he has Dameon Pierce, Dobbins, and Penny, who just went off. So
Yeah.
Between those three, I'd say he has a solid RB2. I mean, maybe Jonathan Taylor too, since he's trash now. It could be an RB2. But yeah, so I'm going to go with an A for Bartis. He clearly blew Barrera out of the water on this trade. Sorry, Barrera. But it was just, I don't really know why he did that. His running backs are all injured, so it wasn't like I don't really know, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I didn't really see the logic behind it, but he got a wide receiver. The news persuaded him to do that. Still don't know what the news
Whatever
was,
the
but
news may be.
yeah. So I think Bartis won that trade. I'm happy Barrera made a trade. I'm waiting for more trades from Barrera. He has declined every offer I've given him, but hopefully we could work something out.
You and me both. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one for sure. We questioned it definitely right away, and I'm still questioning it now. I mean, when you drafted Dobbins, you drafted him as a kind of like a guy that you knew wouldn't be valuable right away. So his value doesn't go up or go down based on his play because he hasn't been playing. And then you kind of just ship him away for a waiver. I've owned Brandon Ayuk, so I know what it's like to go through the Brandon Ayuk struggles. He's not going to give you more than 15 ever. So
yeah,
a low upside kind of guy in terms of wide receiver. An interesting one for a guy that needed the depth, but it's early still, so we'll see. I like your grade so far on the 3 trades, but we did not bring up our first actual trade. We technically have had 4. Our first actual trade was during the draft. A lot of us remember. I remember specifically because not only did a few players of mine get sniped right before me, I had texted you to make the trade because I had known, not many people know this, will bring it to light, but you had been looking to move back in the 3rd round. And you had texted me, I'm sure you texted a bunch of people as you made the trade with Barrera, but you had texted and talked. And it's interesting because I texted you on draft day to possibly make that same deal that you made with Barrera. But of course, my own blunder as I wasn't at the draft, and that might have held me back a little bit. I had to wait the 30 seconds on the phone, and the deal's already done. But
I think it definitely held you back. I looked at my phone after the trade and I saw your message.
it's tough, but hey, it all works out in my favor because I'm happy with who I ended up with and happy that I didn't take some of the players that I mentioned in this trade. The trade was you sent your 2nd, 3rd, and 7th for Barrera's 2nd, 3rd, and 7th. That ended up being Saquon, Pittman, and Russell Wilson, and Barrera drafting Fournette, Javonte, and Schultz. Now, looking back on this week, in week 4, it is very easy, or at the start of week 5, it is very easy to give a grade here. What are your initial thoughts? I mean, it is your trade, but what are your initial thoughts on that deal?
Yeah, in terms of grades, I'd definitely say that I would give myself an A, to be honest. I mean, I don't want to sound like biased or anything, but I traded up and got the number 1 running back. Yep. That's not my bias. You guys know I love Saquon, but ESPN states
it's paid off.
Yeah. So in terms of that, and then Pittman, Russ hasn't been anything I expected, but it helped me beat Barrera. Russ went off when I needed him to, when Barrera was talking shit about him all year. So
There you go.
it worked out. Saquon and Pittman have been unbelievable. And on his side, I'd give him a B. He got solid players. I like Schultz in the 7th, definitely. Javonte in the 3rd, mid-3rd, that was good too. And even Fournette in late round 2. I think he had the right idea. It just didn't work out too well for him.
Yeah, I think initially, it felt pretty even. It sucks what happened in week 4 with Javonte tearing his ACL. Kind of shows you as a clear winner there. Schultz has also been battling them injuries. Hopefully for Barrera, these guys can kind of work it out, It's tough when you lose your 3rd rounder, especially in a trade. But we've only had 4 so far this year. Hoping we get a few more, and then we can have you back on and kind of review the next trades.
Definitely, man. I had a blast. I'd love to come back for more. Hopefully people make trades. Some people are shutting them down, like I said, way too early before they even know what the offer is. They're just saying, I'm not making trades. So hopefully people get more eager and participate in the league a little bit rather than just saying no and then ending the conversation.
Right. Definitely. It'll be nice to see everyone get on. Plus, you get a little feature on the podcast, and who doesn't want that?
Exactly. I've been dying for this.
Yeah, exactly. We're happy to have you. You're always welcome back on the pod, Josh. It was great talking to you. Great talking trades with you. Anything else you want to say before we kind of wrap this up?
I'd say I doubted Bartis's team from the beginning with the double tight end, and it shut me up. I don't know. It's way better than I thought it would. He has the 2 top tight ends in a tier of their own. Everyone else is average, putting up like 10 points a game, while Andrews and Kelsey are putting up 20, 25. Yeah. So shout out Bartis. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's been good for him so far. Definitely a big surprise there. But you're battling right behind him.
Yep, trying to catch up. I also thought, I'm just going to talk about Bartis's team. I don't know. It's really good. But
that's fine.
I thought the Amon-Ra pick was amazing. Took him in like round 6. I thought his wide receivers were going to be awful this year. And Amon-Ra has been a wide receiver 1. So
yeah, no,
he needed one, and he got it.
Definitely looks good. And it hurts. Well, I know, a couple of us like to look back on the draft and who we took over who. And it pains me to see that I took Allen Robinson in the 6th and Amon-Ra went 5 picks after that. How stacked my team would actually be if I had Amon-Ra instead of Allen Robinson. But hey, maybe that leads to me not getting, Marquise Brown in round 7. So we don't like to play too much on the hypothetical side, the what ifs per se. But yeah, it's been good for him so far.
Yeah, I took AJ Dillon that round, so I do the same thing.
I think everyone in round 6 regretted their picks, looking back on it. That's all we have today. As always, keep watching, like the videos, and if you want to get on the pod, just let me know. Keep fantasy great, fellas.